Like a distant dot in the Indian Ocean is a huge and unspoiled coral atoll, a lonely, isolated place close to the equator. On this tropical atoll live some truly amazing and unique animals, and a handful of humans, the guardians of one of nature's great treasure islands. Aldabra is extremely remote. The nearest landmass is Africa, 700 kilometers away. It lies north of Madagascar, almost in the middle of the Indian Ocean. For over 100,000 years, it has remained largely unchanged, untouched, and uninhabited, except by a small band of dedicated people who occupy a scientific research station that clings to the edge of the atoll's giant lagoon. Occasionally, they have visitors, like Ben Stobart, a British marine scientist. He's studying Aldabra's coral reef, and this is his 4th trip.
Hi, Ben, how are you, man? That's good. We just had this little talk, eh?
With him is Guy Esperon, Aldabra's new chief warden, who's being briefed on what Ben's doing.
All right, thanks.
Guy is 1,000 kilometers from his home in Mahé, the main island of the Seychelles to which Aldabra belongs. He only sees his children twice a year.
Which we can run the video down.
Okay. 5 centimeters coral to measure.
Ben is one of 4 scientists who work for the Aldabra Marine Program, which monitors the health of the atoll's reef.
Minimum width, and record them again on a special data sheet that shows that the fish populations, surprisingly, haven't really been affected. I'm just going to show you how we do these video transects. What we have is underwater video. This video footage was taken at Site 1, which is just in front of
the 1998 El Niño damaged coral reefs worldwide. At that time, a team from Cambridge and Washington universities chose Aldabra to study coral recovery rates, because its reef is unaffected by people or pollution. Ben is filming selected parts of the reef along anchored ropes. It's slow-going and fairly static work. He says he gets colder here than anywhere else, though the water's about 28 centigrade. The film will be a visual record of coral growth. Normally, all 4 scientists from the marine program come out together, accompanied by volunteers. But this time, Ben's here alone. They've put ID tags on selected baby corals, but algae quickly cover them. When Ben's cleaned the tag, he notes its number on a special plastic pad, then measures the coral to see if it's grown in the last year. Corals, like divers, are sensitive creatures. Subject them to a spell of water temperatures above 31 centigrade and they die. This one's in bad shape. A sponge is growing on its lower right. Disease has killed its crown, and only the left is living. Like reefs worldwide, Aldabra's has been hit by global warming and rising sea temperatures, peaking in 1998's El Niño. But the presence of more butterfly fish shows that it's slowly recovering. Fixed data logging devices record the sea temperature. Tracking this is a key aspect of the marine program's work. In goes another logger. The marine program team also count fish. If they just swam around singly like this batfish, life would be simple. But who could count a shoal? And who'd challenge a scientist who says it's shoals rather than single fish that show the reef is healthy? Predators prove the same thing, because they're only around if there's enough to eat. Sweetlips are another good sign. They like healthy coral reefs, and several species are better news than just one. They go on record too. It's very peaceful working down here, but Ben knows he mustn't exceed 2 hours on a dive. There's no medical help if something goes wrong. Fish can be inquisitive, and an audience of oriental sweetlips watches him count and measure the baby corals inside a square meter quadrat. It can easily take him 20 minutes to find every little coral under 5 centimeters. These are called recruits. If they're fit and shaping up nicely in his underwater laboratory, Ben will be happy. There are no glass sides to this fish tank, so it's a bonus to find study subjects who don't run away, like these black-spotted sweetlips. Sweetlips rest up in the shallows by day. At night they go deeper to search out bottom-dwelling invertebrates. If only all film stars were so cooperative. When it comes to shoals, the quantity and different species must go on record. That information alone demonstrates the richness of a reef. Predator numbers matter too. There's a good population of honeycomb moray eels here, another encouraging sign. While Ben works on the reef, the man who describes himself as mother and father to the station staff is busy making sure all's well on land. Guy's peaceful life on the atoll is only occasionally interrupted by outsiders, so a strict dress code is hardly an issue. Two-way radio keeps him in touch with his rangers.
Seychelles station.
Seychelles, I received you very clearly, over.
Yeah, Roger, Francis, this is station. I am just checking with you. What is the, how many tortoises have you spotted on your monitoring?
Aldabra has some very special animals. Some are unique, many are migrants like the people. Guy checks up on his protégés regularly. Like this sacred ibis, so called because the ancient Egyptians revered it. Aldabra has its very own subspecies, with one feature that distinguishes it from Africa's ibis. Its eyes are the color of the sea in which it grubs for small invertebrates. There's another bird here that's considered even more special than the Aldabran ibis. Sacred ibises can fly, but this bird can't. The flightless rail is a true survivor, a leftover from the days when there were other far larger flightless birds in the Indian Ocean, like the dodo. The dodo came to a sad end in the 17th century, but this bird unique to Aldabra has hung on, undoubtedly because Aldabra was only inhabited for a very brief period. This tame and trusting partridge-sized bird still has remnant wings, but they're too small to fly with, so no risk of accidentally being blown out to sea and drowned. The rails have no natural enemies and don't mind people. They make themselves at home everywhere. But station policy is no one's allowed to touch them. The rail is thriving on Aldabra because the atoll's strictly protected. It's a good place for birds. Most are wanderers. Egrets can cross the ocean to Africa, but stay here just because it's a good place to live. In other countries, they often ride piggyback on large animals, waiting to grab insects that fly up. Here, there's nothing to carry them. They must grub for their own food. It's still a waiting game, waiting for invertebrates to be foolish enough to raise their heads. Other Aldabran birds are just visiting. Turnstones come here for their annual winter break. These are long-haul migrants who swap an icy Arctic for warmer northern hemisphere coastlines. They get their name from their habit of flipping small stones to find invertebrates. Grey herons can easily cross to East Africa too, but why move when they can have everything here? A ghost crab is a midget beside the monster who patrols the beaches. This tree-climbing colossus has no natural enemies on Aldabra, and some of them grow to over 1 meter across. It's the robber or coconut crab, a hermit crab that doesn't need a shell because nothing eats it. The pincer power of the world's largest land crab is impressive. The robber retreats to his hideout, leaving the beach to the locals. Every day, the locals do battle with Aldabra's powerful tides. When the tides withdraw, the ghost crabs have housework. Until the day they die, they're condemned like Sisyphus rolling his stone perpetually uphill to rebuild burrows the tide has swamped. Such effort, such craftsmanship, and the next tide will only wreck it. When Guy commutes to work, the crabs' homes are free of sand. When he returns a few hours later, their doors are locked against the tide and they're half a meter underwater. The heart of Aldabra's splintered atoll is a vast lagoon, big enough to swallow Manhattan. The tidal rise and fall through the channels that link it to the ocean generate incredible currents. Many creatures have learned to thrive in these channels. Such animals are of interest to the scientists, so Ben is going to dive in the biggest channel, the Grande Passe. There's not much traffic on his commuter route. Who wouldn't swap their 9-to-5 for this? For best diving conditions, he waits until the tide is slack before the currents start to build. His fellow commuters travel the currents without either mask or oxygen tank. This huge relative of the brain coral is so dense few organisms can attack it. Its smooth form, like that of a brain coral itself, is impervious to the rip of the currents. Aldabra's soft corals are flexible enough to bend before the storm of the tides and come to no harm. 4 times a day, the currents rush through and buffet everything in the channels. The surge strips the middle of the channel almost bare. The current takes Ben on a rapid descent into the deeper reaches of the channel. He doesn't even need to move a flipper, because these roller coaster currents can reach 8 knots. As it reaches the edge of the channel, the current slackens. Yet even so, the few corals that survive here are round and not fixed to the bottom. These corallits actually prefer reefs with strong currents. Ben says Aldabra's corallits are spectacular, so the program's scientists have added them to their agenda. A stingray. Aldabra's shallows suit these big, graceful fish perfectly. They hover like alien spacecraft just above the seabed, feeding. They can't see what it is they eat, but they can smell their prey and detect it with special receptors that pick up its electrical impulses. Some reef dwellers love strong currents. The spreading branches of Tubastrea coral snatch food as it's swept past. The living reef has created its own strange architecture, a world of bridges, cathedral buttresses, and grottos. Over the centuries, living coral has grown up on the solid foundations of far older fossilized coral to produce this underwater extravaganza. And fossil coral, now limestone, is almost the only thing underpinning the atoll. The jagged spears and shards of ancient corals ring it with a hostile barrier. 2 reefs, one living, one dead, are Aldabra's natural guardians. Treacherous waters and a lack of safe harbor have kept the atoll uninhabited for centuries. But it was once very different. Millions of years ago, a volcano burst violently from the bottom of the Indian Ocean. By the time it died and sank, living corals had already colonized its flanks. And as the older crater subsided and the ocean flooded in, the atoll and the lagoon of today were born. In the millions of years since the volcano died, sand and sediment have gradually covered the ancient corals. It took tough and versatile animals to survive in such terrain. One of them is the Aldabran giant tortoise. This survivor from the great age of reptiles lives only here. Its cousin is the more famous Galapagos giant tortoise. 100,000 live on the atoll, far outnumbering their distant Pacific Ocean cousins. But a tropical island isn't necessarily paradise for a creature with its own roof on its back. If it can't find shade during the heat of the day, it can bake to death inside that mobile home. And there are very few trees to offer shade. One of them is the getada. This moth-pollinated tree is a survivor. The harsh sun, poor soils and salt spray of atolls defeat most plants. But not this shoreline colonizer, so useful to giant tortoises. It provides food and midday shelter. Tortoises don't rush life, even when mating. These reptiles are remarkably long-lived. They outstrip humans by several decades, surviving until the age of at least 100, sometimes more. This one's a mere babe in arms. It's only 5. It has decades to go to reach full size and a girth of 2 meters or more. A full-grown adult tortoise can weigh over twice a large human adult. The 5-year-old midget is hardly 5 kilos. Guy is self-appointed mum and dad to the tortoises too, and keeps tabs on as many as he can.
Suggests that has declined in the last a research he did about 4 or 5 years ago.
This protege of his is going nowhere fast. Its medium size gives away its age, about 30 years, just a teenager really.
25 and a half.
The white marks between the plates of the shell show this Aldabran is still growing. The film crew feel like Aldabrans by now too. They've been here for a month and it's a really tough daily grind. Chief Warden Guy is fascinated by what one of the crew have brought along. Doi Malingri is one of Italy's great solo yachtsmen. For some time now, his passion has been microlights. In the mid-80s, he invented a wonderful machine. This invention has huge potential for fun and serious work. It's an FIB. Attach a microlight to a dinghy and that's what you have, a flying inflatable boat.
Ready?
Yes.
Ben has bagged first go for his work.
If we could go round over the settlements, to take pictures is out to sea, so we got the sun behind them, so I could take photographs outwards.
Yes, okay, and then you tell me which.
Shoot outwards.
No problem.
Doi is a writer, a pilot and a veteran of the sea, famous in Italy.
And after that, we'll go down and do the
Ben
same.
couldn't be in better hands.
Okay.
The FIB can take rough handling and doesn't mind rough landings, though perhaps it's not ideal for steady photos. This is the way to combine business and pleasure. Remote though it is, Aldabra is still not safe from the occasional poacher. This machine should scare those that slink into the atoll to kill turtles, and they'll be easy to spot. The FIB has passed its first Aldabran test. Smooth flight, smooth landing, and an excellent tool for surveying the atoll.
Making the water a lot clearer. It was good today. Had a good dive.
All right.
Guy will have to be patient a little longer before it's his go. Office work calls. Ben needs to talk corals with him.
You're going to be diving now soon.
Yeah.
You'll find those sheets are really useful for identifying corals.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
I'm just going to show you some data from our last expedition.
All right.
8 sites on the outer reef now. One of the interesting things we discovered on the second trip, well, first and second, along the north coast of the easterly point. And similarly with the dead coral, we have site 4 and 4 is very abundant. Site 5 again.
A lonely outpost that has no doctor, no emergency transport, and only a boat with an outboard motor, yet has a computer.
You don't know.
We're trying. We've been coming back now in February, March, and we've been able to get around here. In fact, this year we did a new transect, site 9. Well, we're going to call that site 13.
Meanwhile, outside, the afternoon tide is ebbing. It's happened since the island was born, but some animals still get caught out. A female green turtle has a long haul to the open sea. She's a meter long and weighs twice an average man. She came ashore to lay her eggs and misjudged the tides. Midday is a dangerous time for a marine animal to be stranded. Temperatures here stay around 32 centigrade. Like the tortoises, she could bake in the heat if she can't reach the sea. This is a painful, exhausting trek for her life. But she's done it. Aldabra's tides rise and fall over 3 meters, stranding many turtles each egg-laying season. But such captive subjects give scientists like Ben a chance to top up their turtle data. She's a reluctant movie star, though. Just waiting for the incoming tide to get away. Aldabra is a turtle paradise, and there are hundreds of them because, like all atoll animals, they're strictly protected. Hawksbill and green turtles thrive here. But though these peaceful creatures are easy to track and study on land, what they get up to at sea is still largely unknown. Turtles travel enormous distances, but always return to lay their eggs in the place where they were born, if they've survived natural predators, poaching, and the illegal tortoiseshell trade. As Ben labors away in his seabed office, one of the research station's wardens is headed for his. Tony Jupiter is senior ranger. He doesn't see his wife very often because she lives in Mahé and his work keeps him here. One of his jobs involves getting wet. Tony is the station's turtle catcher because it's part of his ranger's duties to monitor the population. His technique is simple. The turtle weighs more than Tony. Luckily, he has buoyancy and a firm foothold on his side. And Francis the boatman. Back to base to find the turtle's vital statistics. This animal is new to Tony. And to Tina, the station's trainee ranger.
With 74.7.
So once they have her waistline taped, she'll be given a tag with an ID number. This doesn't apparently hurt. If someone on the far side of the Indian Ocean picks her up, the tag will tell them she's an Aldabra. Very delicately, Tony removes a tiny tissue sample for DNA analysis. Freedom. Turtles often seek shelter in the safe waters of the lagoon. The atoll is made up of a few islands, and the lagoon that lies in its center is edged with mangroves. Aldabra's mangroves are protected, like the entire unique atoll, which isn't the case for most of the world's remaining mangrove forests. These are the most salt-tolerant trees on Earth. When the tide is in, the strange bridges and arches of their roots are perfect hiding places for many small fish. When the sea retreats, small tidal pools are left on the barrier of ancient corals that line the shore, and even in relatively small pools, there are predators. White-eyed moray eels eat crabs. Holes in the limestone make excellent places to ambush them from. They also provide shade for a species happy to share lodgings. But the eels also actively hunt down their prey. Once out in the open shallows, they must watch out for their enemies. Like sharks. When the coast is clear, the hunt is on. Though crabs top its menu, a white-eyed moray is an opportunist and scavenger, and eats bits of organic debris left by the tide. Black-tipped sharks are also opportunists, and the shallows are good hunting ground for them too. A squeeze and a hug, and the eel tears a piece of weed into bite-sized pieces. Ben will soon be leaving Aldabra. He makes Guy a present of some of the marine program's underwater temperature loggers.
There they are. Fantastic.
He'll bring new ones when he next returns.
Several other islands.
Because I always wonder what they look like.
Every additional piece of equipment will be put to good use by Guy and his team, guardians of this distant outpost.
We can easily run for 3 years.
I see. Sharks?
This is Ben's last evening. He's celebrating by going on a night dive.
We caught a lot of large trevally and bang, sharks, half a head.
On the channel.
Yeah.
Junior Ranger Tina, also from Mahé, is joining him. She's been here only a few months. This is part of her training. The pair would be sunk without a good waterproof torch. The reef at night is transformed. Different creatures are about. It glows with a kaleidoscope of colors that would be hidden from them without the torch. Many corals seem to vibrate with life in the darkness. A pencil urchin grazes a coral. This feeding action can cut a recruit's life short. A distant relative of this brittle star is notorious for the damage it's done to reefs like Australia's Great Barrier. Algae eaters like this prawn are not in the same league as the crown of thorns starfish. Because urchins can also damage newly growing reefs, they can be cause for concern, but they're not numerous enough around Aldabra to be a problem. The Indian Ocean is home to many cowries. The leopard cowrie is probably the most spectacular. It cloaks its cat-like shell with a soft mantle as it feeds at night. Some mantles contain toxins. All mantles clean the shell. The dive is a wonderful way for Ben to remember his time on this tropical atoll. Ben's field study is over in Aldabra for this year. Guy and his team of 10 will be alone again, waiting for the next supply ship to arrive 3 months from now, if the weather allows. The sun doesn't always shine in Aldabra for this solar to measure. It's a good day to get airborne. Dowie and his amazing machine are still here. So Guy is finally going to have his chance to overfly his beloved atoll.
Yeah, Mike, good morning. This morning I will fly to Jindo.
Okay. When we are in the air, you show me where.
This trip is pure pleasure. But Dewey's machine is not just a pretty face. It'll now be working for its keep, as the station staff have bought it for monitoring purposes and deterring poachers. Beneath them lies a pristine environment, safe from the kind of human exploitation that has destroyed so many island paradises. Just 10 dedicated people live here permanently. They're guardians of one of the last true unspoiled places on Earth, where wild creatures of all kinds can live as they have always done. Where the Indian Ocean's largest frigate bird colony can soar aloft without threat. The law of nature makes frigate birds harass and frighten boobies to steal their catch. This scene has been enacted here for over 100,000 years. May it continue for many thousands more, with the help of the guardians of Aldabra.